Hello dear students, today we are going to discuss the last chapter in our history textbook, that is Heritage Management, the ninth chapter. And in this chapter we are going to study about the sources of history, their conservation and preservation. Now sources of history we have learned quite earlier, which comprises of oral sources, written sources and material sources, which we all have discussed in the past. Now we are also going to see how they can be preserved, how they can be uh, preserved and conserved, that is stop them from getting destroyed and keeping them or maintaining them in good state. Also we are going to discuss about some famous monuments, libraries and archives. Also we are going to discuss about encyclopedia. So let us begin. The sources of history and all the history books that are available today are the result of the diligent work of several historians. Institutes like libraries, museums and archives conserve and preserve this precious historical heritage. They choose important specimens from the heritage collection and exhibit them. They also publish research journals, informative pamphlets, leaflets, posters, etc. Now children, we all know that we come to know about the history of our past through the sources. Now so different types of sources are there, like oral, written and material sources, as I told you. But these sources are preserved properly, they are stored properly, so that they can be made available to the public whenever they are needed. Also some historical material, like we go to museums and there we get to see so many different things of the history, related to the history, related to the past, related to the kings, how they used the weapons or their clothes or their armors, and how they used to travel. That also sometimes we get to see. Also the pots or containers and so many different things we get to see, and from that we can come to know about so many things about the past. Also we have libraries wherein books are stored, and in the books we get all the written information. Also just like museums, we also have archives. In these archives also so many things related to history are preserved. So these are the things or these are the places wherein we can get a good information about the past if we require about the specific thing, and these things are preserved and conserved so that they can be used later on. Also then when few historians refer these books or have some new findings, their research materials, their journals, their informations are also published through the journals. The way we have newspapers to get the daily news, similarly there are journals and informative pamphlets, leaflets and posters which give us information about the history related or pertaining to a specific era or specific time or specific thing. So all these are made available through the libraries, museums and archives, and also through the journals and pamphlets, leaflets and posters. The documents and artifacts which are not exhibited but historically very important are stored in the museums and archives after completing necessary treatments for their conservation and preservation. Those documents and artifacts are made available to researchers as and whenever necessary. Libraries conserve, preserve and manage the books. See children, now there are so many things, like if we say the iron armors or armor weapons, iron weapons which were used by the kings during their wars so many years before. So now if they are to be preserved or if they are to be kept in the archives or in the museums, it is very important that they are maintained properly. or they are taken care of properly. So there has to be a proper treatment done to those things, like cleaning them and preventing it from rusting, and also maintaining its shape, because otherwise it is quite a good chance that because of the climatic changes, or because of the um, because it's not covered, it is kept open in the museums at times. So any of such factors can affect, and it can spoil that, it can destroy that. So all these things, even the papers, even if they are not touched, even if they are not used, still the papers, few years down the line, the papers get so weak, or if you try to open a book which is few hundred years ago, which was written few hundred years ago, when you try to open that, the pages tear off, they fall into pieces. So how are those informations, or how are those preserved then, those books? So there are specific treatments, and there are specific ways to prevent all these things. So that proper treatment is given by the knowledgeable people who have knowledge about the preservation and conservation, and those people preserve these books and preserve all these materials which are related to the history in the museums and archives. Now the historical information which is really very very important, that is generally not needed by the common people, that is generally needed by the researchers or historians who really have an in-depth knowledge of a particular thing, or relating to history. So when these people need it, they are made available to these historians or researchers, and um, that is why the libraries and the archives need to be conserved, preserved, and managed very properly, so that whatever information is required, or whatever references are required, that can be made available to these researchers or historians very quickly, and very exactly what they want, that can be given to them. Next is the sources of history, their conservation and preservation. Now each step, like collecting the sources of history, creating their records and indexes, exhibiting manuscripts, old books and artifacts, after completing necessary treatments very carefully, requires very careful handling and management. So these information which are available, or which are collected through different sources, so it needs to be recorded properly. There has to be a record and index, like when we open our textbooks, uh, we supposed to, if you wish to study sports and history, so you go to the index section, find out what number of chapter that is, then you find out the page number, so that it becomes easy for you to jump onto that page directly. Otherwise it will be so very complicated that you keep on turning the pages searching for your required chapter. Similarly, this is a very small thing, that you are searching your single chapter in your textbook. It is comparatively very easy, but then we have so many huge can say manuscripts which have so many pages. So finding them, or in an archive, there are so many n number of things which are stored related to history. So finding a particular thing is very difficult if they are not stored properly, if they are not indexed properly, or if they are not recorded properly. So it is very important that these manuscripts, old books, are indexed properly, they are numbered, they are recorded, and then kept in a proper place, so that it can be made easily available. Also it is very important that all these things get a good treatment, so that they do not get destroyed even by the passage of time, or because of handling. So it needs to be handled very carefully, it needs to be preserved very properly, so that it doesn't cause any harm even after so many years. It needs people with specific skills. Only trained persons who are duly qualified can take up these tasks. So there are people who are specially trained, there are special courses for this preservation and conservation of this historical material, historical sources, and only those people can do that because only they have the proper knowledge of handling these books and giving the treatments, handling these materials, giving the treatment and storing them in a real proper way. Now first is the oral sources of history. Collecting and computing of folk songs and folk tales, etc. Now when we say about the oral sources, there are few songs like the folklores, the folk songs, or the buckers. So all these oral sources, how are they preserved? First of all, they are, now with the development in the technology, we can record them, or we can uh, preserve them on the computers or on the media, so that they can be preserved and they can be used by the people when and where they want. Now if we see the buckers or the folklores or the kirtans or the oral sources, such type of oral sources, when um, these were actually there in those ages, that time none of us was there to hear that, or even our parents and grandparents are not though they also do not have the exact lyrics or exact tunes. They are also the like, to them also it was inherited, and during this inheritance there can be quite a lot of chances that they have been changed a bit. So when it is now those original things, whoever had a good knowledge of that, whoever has a record of that, has stored it, collected it and computed it properly so that it can be stored. Classifying, analyzing and interpreting the compiled material. First of all these materials which are available, those are classified means separated. Like relating to Shivaji are the buckers relate. First of all there is a group, for example I am telling you, first of all there is a group called buckers. In that buckers also there are relating to Shivaji, relating to someone else, relating to the history in general about the war. So these are like Panipatchi Bakar, we have studied that. So if it is stored separately in this way, if you want the Bakars relating to Shivaji, you can just get the required thing if they are classified properly, if they are separated properly. Then analyzing and interpreting the compiled material. Analyzing it is scrutinizing it, or having a checking that, and then interpreting is to reproduce it, the compiled data, whatever the compiled material is, that needs to be put together again. Then comes the publishing the results of respective research. So if there is any research, or if they are classified, it also needs to be specified, like where it is, on what basis it is classified, and what are the titles to it, and where it is stored. So whatever the researches are done, that also needs to be published. The results of the research are to be published. Now there requires a necessary training. So the necessary trainings are sociology and anthropology, social psychology, mythology and linguistics, library science and information technology, history and historical research method, writing of research reports and articles. So the people who are specified, or who have the specific knowledge in these particular aspects, or in these particular fields, those people take care of those classifications or those preservation things. Now next comes the written sources of history. collecting coins and copper plates with inscriptions on them, documents like official records, personal correspondences and diaries, historical books, old books, manuscripts, pictures, photographs, etc. All these things comprise the written source of history. So there are inscriptions on the coins which also do reveal so many things to us. So whatever is written on those coins, that tell us so many things, and that becomes a source of history. Similarly, copper plates with inscriptions on them, documents, official records, all these things, historical books, old books, then correspondence and diaries, all these things serve to be the written sources of history. So completing necessary mechanical and chemical processes of cleaning for the conservation and preservation of the collected documents. So all these documents which are collected, may it be a copper plate, may it be a coin, it may be an official document, or it can be photographs, pictures, manuscripts, old books, whatever it is very important that the necessary mechanical or chemical processes are done onto it for cleaning that, and later on preserving and conserving those materials. Ascertaining the historical value of the collected documents. Sometimes it is very important to determine the historical value, how important they are, how authentic they are, how real they are. So all this information and finding out the value of the historical document that is collected, like if it is something very important and then if it is not really preserved with that care, then it will be a big problem later on. So just to understand how important historical value it has or how important it is, accordingly it can be stored and it can be treated and preserved and conserved. So it is very important to determine or ascertain the historical value of the collected document. Exhibiting selected documents. Now when we go to the museums or when we go to some museums or palaces, it is not that each and everything related to the kings or the or relating to the museum, each and everything are displayed. It is very important to exhibit selected material. Few things need not be displayed, few things need to be taken utmost care of, wherein those cannot be presented. Instead they should be stored in the archives and libraries, and they should be taken more care about. So there are different things which need to be treated differently. So it is very important to ascertain which things need to be displayed. So similarly, only selected documents are exhibited. Now the remaining documents or the remaining things are not displayed to the public in general, but then they are stored properly, they are conserved and preserved properly, so that the historians or the researchers, when they want it or if they need it for reference, it can be made available for them very easily. Publishing edited documents and research reports. Now on the basis of this historical documents, again there are so many people or so many historians or researchers who find out some new research work or find out new reports on the basis of the existing documents. So all these new findings are need to be stored properly. Also they need to be published and edited. So these edited means selected documents need to be published so that they can be used for reference, used as reference by the other historians or the researchers. Now the necessary training required for this is the knowledge of scripts like Brahmi, Modi, Persian and their development. Now since we are discussing about history, about the very old documents, So these documents are not, or rather were not, written in the languages or the script we use now. So these most of these documents were written in the Brahmi script or in the Modi script, Persian script. And later on, with the passing of time, these these scripts also changed, these developed, like the Hindi which we used earlier, or the Sanskrit which we used earlier. Gradually the Hindi went on changing. Like few years before, the Hindi that was used was very pure, you can say, or very literature. Nowadays the Hindi is changed so much, it's more of English rather than Hindi or English. So these changes is very important to understand, because the languages, these scripts, Brahmi, Modi, it's not possible for us to understand now. uh, So it is very important that the people who know these languages can understand, read these languages, or read the material written in these languages, and then they can translate it to the current languages which are used now, so that it can be more useful to the people. Basic knowledge of social organization and traditions, literature and culture, dynastics, administrative systems, etc., of past societies. So they should have at least basic knowledge. The remaining knowledge they can get from the documents itself, but they should have at least basic knowledge of the social organizations and traditions. Those were in the past. Also the literature and culture. Then dynasties. Dynasties is kings, uh, like the Maurya dynasty. Then the, so these people used to rule the countries or the premises. So their dynasties, knowing their dynasties also is very important. So we should know that these belongs to the Yadav dynasties, these belongs to the Maurya dynasties. So those people who are into this um, preservation and conservation work of the sources of history, especially written sources, they should also have the knowledge of the dynasties. Then administrative systems during those eras. Similarly, they should also have the knowledge of various schools and styles of paintings and sculptural art, and history of their development. So in the past, there were like more of paintings and sculptural artwork, and it is very important that the person who studies this should have some knowledge of these various schools and styles of painting and the sculptural art, and the history of their development. So even these, the way the scripts have changed, similarly the painting styles and the sculptural styles and schools have also changed. Like for example, we can also say that when there was a Mughal rule in India, that time the architecture or the sculptural work or the paintings that we see during that era was more influenced by the Mughal style of painting. Later on, when the Persians came in, it had a blend of Persian styles. So it went on changing. So this knowing the history of this development is also very important. Knowledge of types of paper, ink, and colors. So now in different eras or different, like so many years before, there were different papers used. Very initially, when papers were not used, there were leaves of the mm trees which were used to write, uh, used to be the source of writing. So it used to be written on these leaves. So the type of the paper or the ink or the colors, like earlier in the paintings, natural colors were used. So having knowledge of all these things is very important. Also, knowledge of properties of various stones and metals used for inscription. Now, in the inscriptions, we have different materials and different stones are used. So, knowing the properties of these various stones and metals which are used for inscription is also very important, so that the necessary treatment can be given to them uh, while store conservation and preservation. Also, the knowledge of equipment and chemicals used in various processes of cleaning, conservation, and preservation. So, depending upon the various stones or various metals or various types of inks used, various types of paper used, the treatment which is given, the chemical or the mechanical treatment which is given, that differs. So it is very important to know what type of metals or stones or paper or ink is used, what type of colors is used is also important, and also the knowledge of what type of chemicals or what types of equipments and what type of mechanical processes should be given to different to these different um, mediums is also very important. Knowledge of various approaches of managing exhibitions in museums, galleries, and information technology. So, what is more important? What needs to be revealed? What is what things are to be presented in which manner, or in a museum which things should be kept together, which things should not be kept together, also in the art galleries also, or in the information technology like social media or such things also, which information should be given, which information should be displayed at what place. All these things are very important, and there has to be a proper knowledge of all these things. So training, all these trained peoples who have the proper knowledge of exhibiting these things in the museum or galleries or information technology are used so that it can be managed in the best way. So like when we visit the museums or the galleries, there are similar things are kept together. You cannot you generally don't see the utensils, two three utensils kept, then the armor is kept, or then the weapons are kept. So it is, once we go through, it is all the crockeries or the bone china material which is kept. Then we can see the utensils, then also we can see the weapons or